I'm the moderator for today's webinar on empowering women leaders in a shifting landscape. This is an Equilead initiative, one of the flagship initiatives at Climate Asia and Arthan. So today's discussion comes at a critical time. As we work towards greater gender equity in leadership, we must acknowledge both the challenges and opportunities shaping our professional journeys. Women still hold about 20% of the C-suite roles, despite research from McKinsey showing that companies with gender diverse leadership are up to 20% more profitable. This isn't just a statistic, it's a wake-up call. It highlights the need for intentional investments in women's leadership across sectors. At the same time, global funding dynamics are shifting. The USA blockage has disrupted career paths for many development professionals worldwide, forcing them to rethink their futures. While this presents uncertainty, it also creates opportunities. It's a moment for us to build strategic networks, position ourselves for leadership, and shape the next wave of impact-driven careers. On that note, may I introduce our esteemed panelists. Moutushi Sengupta is the co-founder of Oneworld Colab and brings deep experience in developing and executing institutional and program strategies for culturally relevant socioeconomic development outcomes in Asia, particularly in India. She has worked in senior leadership positions with reputed organizations like DFID, Oxfam, Co-Impact, the MacArthur Foundation, and APPN. Moutushi has extensive experience engaging with government departments, nonprofits, intermediary institutions, and networks in designing and delivering complex multi-actor development initiatives. Our next panelist, Satyam Vyas, is a leading thinker and practitioner with over 2 decades of experience in human capital, climate action, and gender equity across Global South. As founder and CEO of Arthan and Climate Asia, he has pioneered innovative digital platforms and programs that empower civil society organizations in Asia. His work has driven systemic change, particularly through Pratham and other NGOs, improving millions of lives. Satyam is a recognized leader in social impact and sustainability, shaping solutions at the intersection of policy, innovation, and equity. Our next panelist, Rahul Balakrishnan, is the co-founder of Arthan, an organization dedicated to transforming the impact and sustainability sector by harnessing the power of human capital and organizational development. An outcome-driven individual, he has worked in HR, training, and sales verticals with ICICI Prudential and later with the recruitment vertical at Teach for India. Rahul is a Teach for India fellow and holds a graduate degree in commerce from Delhi University and a master's in business administration, specializing in marketing and sales management from XLRI Jamshedpur. So welcome panelists. Today's discussion will revolve around the following: the evolving leadership landscape and new funding models, how strategic storytelling and personal branding can set you apart, leadership roles in the sector, insights and opportunities, navigating career transitions and leveraging transferable skills, the power of networking and sponsorship. By the end of this session, you'll walk away with actionable strategies to elevate your leadership journey and seize emerging opportunities. Now, before we begin, I would like to invite our audience for a quick interactive question. In 1 or 2 words, can you share a leadership challenge that you faced today? Okay, great. So I guess this is similar to what we also received in the questions is on the changing leadership landscape, on personal branding, and you'll see that this is how we've outlined all the session questions. So I would like to now invite our first panelist, Moutushi. With your experience in philanthropy and social impact, how do you think the leadership roles are evolving? And how crucial is diversity in these decisions?
I think diversity is absolutely the key, Pallavi, because I think we have, for a very long time, we have tried to live only with the perfect and perfect as we design. And what the sort of changes that we are witnessing today is also on account of our, our obsession with trying to work only with the perfect. I think in a way we have lost sight of keeping society plural, keeping our teams plural, our objectives plural, and to start living with the fact that not everybody will and should be fitting into our concept of private of perfect as such. So in terms of leadership per se, I think it's really important to give oneself the space um, to figure out what are the boundaries and how can we keep this whole process um, a journey for all of us to learn together, to work together, and to actually to deliver together. What we have lost, I mean, if we don't do it, especially in current times, I think we will have lost the opportunity to make an impact, to be with to be able to work with the very, very complex challenges that are now emerging. And so leadership in many of the organizations, you can see a higher level of awareness towards this. But I think real action needs to be at a much higher level, much more directed, much more intentional than what we are currently witnessing.
Great, thank you so much. Now moving on to Satyam, from your experience at Arthan and Climate Asia, how are funding models shifting, and what implications does this have for leadership in the sector?
Yes, it's great to be here. Really, really challenging time to talk about funding models. And I guess majority of the people here understand what's happening globally. And while we can say that we are sitting far away and it not always tangibly impact us, we live in a highly interconnected world and the downstream impact is fairly significant. So over the last few weeks, we have seen significant retrenchments happening in United States, across the world, not just with USA, with a lot of other ripple down impact happening with other funders pulling back, going back to the drawing board in terms of change in strategy. Sort of reminds me of like COVID era, where the uncertainty started looming very, very highly, especially before the Delta wave, when we had no clue what will happen when things will get shut down. And similarly, there is this uncertainty that is there in the funding environment. To a larger extent, India still remains a safer ground from a domestic philanthropy lens, but I'm assuming all of us are aware of the limitations of that space too. Uh, since it's only been like almost 10, 11 years, it does not have the similar level of maturity that used to exist or still exists in international philanthropy. Direct implication for leaders is how do you plan for this world, which has this kind of ambiguity? I mean, I remember there was a time when one would work on a 5 year strategy at an individual level or at an organizational level. Now, I think we live in a world where it's difficult to even sustain an annual strategy because many things come at your way, which are all surprising and out of nowhere. And you also see people back out on commitments fairly fast. In the past, there was this at least one case when you would say that you have received a signed contract which had a lot of meaning and which people will adhere to. Now, I think we live in a world where even after having a signed contract or a commitment, institutions pull back. So, some of the same basic principles of COVID era for individuals and institutions, which is what kind of funds do you have, what kind of runway do you have, uh, how do you plan for your own workforce, or how do you, as an individual, how do you plan your own life? Because we can't necessarily use conventional wisdom and models that would have worked in the past, and it requires us to remain highly, highly adaptive. And while I know it's very easy to talk about it when you are employed and when you have a viable financial stream, and it's not easy to talk about it if suddenly you are in the job market. Um, an emotion that I go through all the time, even while uh, I started Arthan along with Rahul Achal, but um job market is just has no empathy and has no it teaches you things which no one will ever tell you. I mean, the best of the best of the people who would have excelled in life are treated probably in the worst possible manner when it comes to the job market and its reaction. And I remember Rahul and I had this conversation way back in 2016, 17, saying HR is disjointed. And I think I can make the same statement right now saying human resources disjointed because the logical reasonings fail in this space. Who converts what job fails in this space? What is the tangible thinking in terms of meeting an eligibility criteria and converting something does not work in this space. So I guess I'm speaking both from a lens of an employer and an employee, which is like, what do you do when you are an employer? How do you create that safe workspace in this ambiguous kind of environment? And from an employee perspective, how do you really plan your life and a career in a space that is not necessarily growing anymore? So we know that international development, even the domestic work we do in India, has been shrinking in a structured manner. We don't have data points for the workforce going down over the period of last 10 years, but I'm sure the number of people working in the space is not the same as what it used to be. So clearly, we are part of something larger, which is at a very macroeconomics level is not working. Having said that, I would still like to be optimistic and imagine a ray of light where things will turn and we will find alternative, better models to be able to do what we need to do, because none of the social problems have changed in any format. Probably all of them have gotten worse. And while they always start to say things are getting better, but then I think these poverty indicators also don't factor in the insane real inflation that happens in society. So while people earn more, the cost of living also increases. The people who are poor remains poor, while they are economists who will always have a counter model to that. So yes, but India is still a safe space from a domestic market lens, funding lens. Having said that, the domestic market does not pay as well as international market. So the first statement I would like to give to everyone is that we generally talk about this, that if you're working for domestic NGOs and if you're at the leadership level, keep a salary of 30 to 50 lakhs in mind as the maximum. And if you're working for international institutions, it starts at 50 and onwards. So, but the world does not actually put these two buckets in black and white manner, and thus people start thinking about the numbers very differently. But it's good to have an understanding of the entire market, given where we are right now, and not from how it was in the past, because the last 30 days has sort of changed many things. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Satyam. So one of the questions, like a recurring theme that we had in the signups was storytelling and personal branding, given now these changing landscape, right? So, and leadership isn't just about what you do; it's also about how you position your impact. And personal branding and storytelling play a critical role in establishing yourself as a leader. So coming back to Moutushi, in your leadership journey, how has personal branding shaped your success and maybe opened doors or created new opportunities for you?
Thanks, Pallavi. Um, I mean, the time I started, the whole concept of personal branding was very different at that time. Um, but I'll talk about things that have really stood by me over the several roles that I have fulfilled. Um, One is, I think, really to keep investing in self development, personal development. So, in a way, not to get used to the comforts of the job that you currently have, but to continue investing in learning new skills, trying to figure out, where else can you try your metal, and however comfortable those questions are, to actually put yourself up for it if possible. I mean, that is something that I've always lived up to, that if something is getting very repetitive, something is getting, so I've become too comfortable with my immediate environment. I've always sought out ways of moving forward, and even taking plunges, which sometimes have been really problematic. So it has worked out, but I have pushed myself to do that. And if I had a choice, I would do it again, if I really reached there. So I hold myself true to that value, that yes, I would continue to learn and try out new things. So that is one thing that I definitely would encourage others also to consider as much as possible. The second piece, I think, is to approach issues with humility, to say that, I don't have all the answers, and to acknowledge that, and to make sure that you are trying your best to resolve this. Having the hunger to actually go forward it's a really big fuel. I think it's the strongest fuel to move you forward as such. But also to be aware that not all the answers are already available with you, and being kind to yourself at the same time, to say it's okay to not have all the answers. It's not necessary that I have to have all the answers before I take the decision to take on a new task or a job or a responsibility. That's very important. Third is I would say, in terms of just keeping some people in your system who can continue um, to be your support system as you move forward. Few people, but some people that you think, can continue to hold your hands or to, sort of get you out of spaces where you become very, very, or you become, you lose faith, you lose hope, because in actually we are working in a environment, working in an ecosystem, trying to bring about change, which are very tough to achieve by themselves as such. So it's only natural to feel the lack of energy or be disappointed at different points in time. And so if you're able to sort of have people around you who can cheer you up, there are real rock stars in this sector, I would say, even today, and to stay in their contact really makes a huge difference, as such. So that's something. And fourthly, to be actually grateful. I feel that's something which is not said enough, but to not always get yourself in a groove. We all get into those positions, I think, where we start thinking how helpless we are, or how life has not been kind to us or has not given us the right opportunity. But to consciously and intentionally try to move yourself out of it, to say that, you know, there are many things to be thankful for, even at this point in time. And the biggest, I think, positive force that you have with you is yourself. So one of the things my coach always says, I mean, I remember saying, is that if you're finding so many things wrong around you at this point in time, what are you doing about it? That is the fundamental question, I think, to answer and move forward. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Moutushi, for those inspiring words. And like coming back to Satyam. So on this whole question of personal brand, like I think when I was sort of interviewing for this position, I was asking around, like, do you know, like, who is Satyam Vyas? And like, I think everybody knew who you were, and you've created that brand for yourself. And even like when I go to conferences, I think a lot of people know Rahul as well from Arthan, and like that sort of in a way is a really good feeling that now I'm associated with a brand that's known. So Satyam, like how has been your journey of building your own brand, personal brand, and how important is strategic storytelling for leaders, and what practical steps can professionals take to craft a compelling leadership narrative?
Yeah, I'm thinking deeply when you put it like this. It's I guess I can go back in time in 2015 in a cab drive with Moutushi in West Champaran, and while Moutushi was coming towards the end of a strategy at MacArthur on girls' education, and not necessarily communicating that this is the end of that cycle or a strategy, and MacArthur would be moving towards climate change. But probably that cab journey we connected because of authentic conversations about challenges in this sector. And I remember when I was starting Arthan, or right before even Arthan was born as a word or as an entity, Motishi said, sign me up for whatever you are going to do in life. So I guess some of these things remind you of authentic conversations and relationships in the sector. Our sector, though, has what we call become very, very, what do you say, professional, if I may call it. But I also go back in time when Madhav, I think in around 2007-8, CEO of Pratham said, social sector is like one large family. Everyone likes each other and everyone hates each other. So you have to just live with this reality and figure out which part of the family you want to tilt towards. And I still think about it and laugh, and I like, it is actually that one big family where no one will say that they hate you on the face when they meet you in person, but there's enough of that going on in the background. But coming back to this super loaded question of yours, Pallavi, I would say that being authentic really helps. Yesterday, I saw Nick Martin someone I know and has been a stalwart of social sector communication on LinkedIn. And he said that I've got 3 lakh followers now. I started with 7,000, I don't know how many years ago. And he said, all I did is I wanted to share something about the work I do, and I wanted to make it meaningful for people so that they take something away from it. And I did it relentlessly for I think 10 years, if not longer. I don't remember the exact number of years he mentioned. I'm assuming it will be 5 or 10. Now, here is another thing around building your personal brand. Brands get built when you add value to people's life and not necessarily just to your life. While a lot of people take it the other way around and they think that you build a brand by sharing about your life, which I think is counter to like the brand you need to build when people see value in what you say, your voice, how authentic you are, and how professionally or tangibly you can connect with people. Or let's just largely say you don't get into a meeting where you don't add value. So if you start applying some of these first principles in life and where you are very clear that you enter a room and you add value or you should not be in that room, that's where your reframing starts, and then it's a compounding play over the period of time. And I'm not sure how even LinkedIn has worked in my favor, because I don't think we follow the script of writing every day and like what Nick Martin said and diligently, and I know many people do that. But all I know is that there is a human side of it when you connect with people without having a transactional intent in mind. And what I mean by that, a lot of people come to professional networking when they are looking for something. Are you looking for money? Are you looking for a job? Are you looking for a contact? Professional networking does not respect you when you only show up when the transaction is required. It respects you when you are there, even when there is no transaction that is required. So when you connect with someone on LinkedIn, if you don't send them a message explaining why you have connected with them, remember that it's not a meaningful connection. If you don't even exchange or try to get on a call or make an effort to say that I am adding you for XYZ reason, and when the person adds you, then you revert back in saying, I admire this. While you don't necessarily have to find time to chat with everyone you add, but there has to be a logic model. And I've noticed that, I mean, all of us reach a stage where we have abundance of, let's say, friends on Facebook, connections on LinkedIn. And every time someone says, do you know this person? Actually, you only make introductions to people you know. You don't make introductions to people you have never interacted or exchanged a single message to. So I think from a personal brand building lens and a lot of recruitment things which I've heard, and a lot of senior leaders in the sector follow this. And I keep on telling people, show up in external platforms, talk about your work, because generally people want to hire people they can see. And if you are not seen, then you don't get hired. So if you're sitting behind your laptop and doing incredible work, but if you're not finding platforms to communicate about it, the possibility of you to come in the limelight when someone is going and scouting for you or looking for talent is very, very low. Building a voice, being authentic, being outcome oriented, talking about things you believe in builds that authenticity and persona. And it's a known fact that people who have a certain personal brand receive like 40-50% more opportunities on LinkedIn. So, and why I'm saying this, if you go and see someone on LinkedIn who does not, let's say, has less than 50 connections right now and is not active, the first thing that comes to your mind will be, is it even a real profile? And why would someone trust that person? And it's not just for LinkedIn, a lot of your social presence. So we need to start thinking of these things in a much more macro manner. All of us in the social sector are designed to think about these things from a org perspective. But you are also much beyond an org. If you believe in a theme, people should know you as that thematic. It can't just be that I work for the best organization in education, thus it represents me and my work. No, you need to represent you and your work and your wisdom and your thinking. And that's where the world starts recognizing you as a leader.
So, one very important question that was also common across some of the questions that we received was on leadership roles and career transitions, which are happening quite a lot given like the current scenario. Career transitions are opportunities to reposition your skills and broaden your influence. A study by Britspan Group found that leaders who navigate transitions effectively can see a 30 to 40% boost in career satisfaction and overall impact. So I want to bring in now Rahul, who's been waiting patiently. That you work with professionals making career shifts, and so what are some of the key leadership opportunities that are emerging in corporate and impact-driven sectors now?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Pallavi, for the question, and thank you for having me today. I think just adding on to what Satyam and Moutushi had shared at the start, the domestic market in India is definitely like there's a lot of potential and a lot of things are happening internally within India, and there are a lot of opportunities within CSRs, large scale implementing NGOs, which are still growing in number. Like I said, we can settle that debate around compensation in a. It might take us another hour of discussions to discuss that, but roughly speaking, internally, domestic market is growing. Also, a lot of thematic areas, especially around sustainable finance, climate, and even intersection of gender, climate, and sustainable finance are growing avenues for building one's career. And we are seeing a lot of roles across the board which are coming in from these sectors. Um, and like I said, it's very important how do you blend your knowledge of the sector, but also deeply get involved in discussions, conferences, meetups to gain more understanding about what are the thematic areas which are growing. So not everyone is lucky like Satyam who can get information about MacArthur's funding strategy in a cab ride. But a lot of us have to be present in multiple discussions, roundtables that are happening everywhere, literally across the country, and leveraging that and then using that to build your career trajectory is very critical. Yeah, I hope I answered that question.
Yes, thank you, Rahul. And just like sort of building on that, because of these career transition, I think it's very important to talk about transferable skills. And especially for people who might be moving from corporate to the impact sector or like, trying to sort of have a non-linear path. What are some of the transferable skills that are most valuable for career transitions across industries? You can share that.
So this is a very good question, and I have realized this question never gets old. When I transitioned into the sector, I know this was a question that I would ask my mentors even then. And I think, I think first of all, we need to be extremely self-aware to know what we are very good at. A lot of times, people think that convincing the other person on the other side is more critical than knowing who you really are. And a lot of times, every role, be it corporate sector or the development sector, teaches you certain skills which are transferable in nature, irrespective of what setting you are in. So, ability to operationalize a strategy into execution is a skill which can be easily transferred from any sector to any sector. Stakeholder management, communication, I know we call it fundraising in our sector, but ability to convince someone to take up a service, irrespective of what service it is. You can call it fundraising, you can call it sales, or you can call it business development. These are transferable skills. I feel the ability to sell, and in this case, it is oneself, is never going to go old. So I think the ability to sell can only come when you are really self aware about who you really are and what you can do. And self awareness will slowly gravitate into awareness of the sectors and the roles you are applying to. Uh, Not every title that you see on an advertisement means it's the job that you do. Because a program manager in an Amazon is very different to a program manager in an NGO. So I think we need to go deeper. I think we as a society and we as a group of people need quick answers. We want at a click of a button we get information enough to apply for a role. I think we need to slightly pause, go deeper, really understand oneself, and then use that understanding to derive knowledge about the sector and go at it. But in a summary, I end up speaking a lot. Uh, Ability to sell, ability to operationalize strategy into execution, stakeholder management, because we are dealing with so many different kinds of people in the sector. No matter in which role you are in, you are thinking about the end beneficiary as well as the donor who gave you money. And one needs to have the ability to move from a field conversation to a boardroom to convince a donor. And one needs to be very well equipped to do either side.
Got it, Rahul. And I guess like there are quite a few roles also at Arthan that you would want to talk about, on this topic itself, like if you would like to share more.
Yeah, so there are many roles, right? So we have, I was just talking to Satyam in the morning. We have currently 112 open roles
Mhm.
that we are hiring for, and we cover the length and breadth of the country. And I know a lot of these roles that are visible on the screen. Thank you, Saili. Uh, these are some of the roles which covers multiple thematic areas as well as multiple work streams. So you have roles in finance, you have roles in um, uh, program management, people and culture. You also have programmatic heavy roles in mother and child nutrition, women's economic liberty, etc., etc. There are multiple roles here. Please feel free to get in touch with me and the team. Yeah, more chief of staff, director operations. I don't want to get into the nitty gritties of each role,
Yeah.
but what we are trying to cover here, I know I had to present this list before this meeting today, but the idea behind it was majority of these roles require very generalist skills,
Mhm.
very generalist skills, skills that are that require one to take it up a notch. And this is irrespective of what row that you are reading into. So what I'm trying to say is there's a huge opportunity, and a lot of opportunities keep coming to us. So please feel free to reach out to us, and let's find a way to speak and understand and how we can help you navigate the transition better.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rahul. Now, before we move to the next section, I want to again invite the audience for another quick activity. On this topic of transferable skill, if you could share on the link that will be shared right now by Sally, one transferable skill that you have that can be applied in a new leadership role. And we'll again display it on the screen. What are these different transferable skills that you think are useful? So we're seeing, like, similar to what Rahul was saying, stakeholder management as a very like common skill across sectors. And we're also seeing fundraising, partnerships, people management, mentoring, coaching as sort of other skills, grassroots coordination, that's also important, mentoring teams. Being present as a leader, that's also a good one. And strategy to execution, of course, and communications. Great. Moving on. So the next section is going to be focusing on building networks and leveraging sponsorship. So I want to call back Satyam for this. And um, networking and sponsorship are critical for career growth, but many professionals struggle to build authentic, high impact relationships. I think you also covered this previously, Satyam. What's the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, and why is sponsorship especially important for women leaders?
Great question. So I'm not going to spend too much time on networking, but just to add, anyone with a robust network ends up with a lot more opportunities. Not that people see you as a networked individual, but your network starts working in your favor. So there's a whole network effect and impact that happens. It's what people say are people talking about you when they are not in the room. And that's where the magic starts. So if you reach a stage where people talk about you when you're not in the room, that's probably the stage one needs to aspire for and reach. Coming to mentorship and sponsorship, I was thinking it's great to have Moutushi on this call for those scenarios, which is there's a difference between Moutushi being a mentor when she would guide me once in a while versus Moutushi being a sponsor or sponsorship for me, which is you actively promote someone, which is where you go out and talk about that person and their work and what they bring to the table, which is also aligned with when I said, uh, are there people who are talking about you when you're not in the room? So I think these are two very, very important things. I think a lot of time we go for mentorship, which is largely guidance. Can you guide me on X, Y, Z? That does not mean someone is actively promoting you or your work. So I think distinguishing these two is very, very critical. It's important for career growth. It's important for entrepreneurship. It's important for like supporting people where you can support them. And I've noticed this something very simple, right? So a mentor might not be making introduction emails for you, might not be connecting to you to people very, very in a structured manner. And a lot of time I've noticed that I'm someone who's between a mentorship and a sponsorship for a lot of time, because I would like to see where this goes beyond just giving knowledge transfer. I mean, how you can actively open doors and how you can make introductions. And that works in all forms. So it's call it good karma, call it like you support someone. I've noticed that all of us go through different stages in life where someone who has been your intern actually becomes your boss or in some other strategic advisor at certain point in time. And there is no correlation now which is just linked with age. Different people are in different stages and end up playing different roles. So we need to be very, very open about the fact of supporting and mentoring and sponsoring. Um, I would urge everyone in this group to actively look for sponsorship from women leaders or leaders in general who have been with you and have witnessed your journey. Now, again, this does not happen overnight. You need authentic relationship and someone who trusts you and you trust them. But having these active conversations, because sometimes when people are at a senior level, they don't have bandwidth. So I always tell people, don't go to someone and say, I want to catch up for coffee. Say I want to catch up for coffee to do XYZ, there's a very high possibility the person will do XYZ with you and not actually catch up for coffee because there is no bandwidth. So I think being direct and being very, very clear in terms of asking for help helps. As human beings, we shy away from that. Now, I've been in programs trained where I've been taught to say, go out and write an email with a subject line says need help immediately. And that works because when people see that, you're not doing that all the time, but when you need it, you need it, and the world respects that too because we shy away from it. So yes, so that's sort of a difference between the two, and I would urge everyone to get people on both sides of the spectrum.
Okay, thank you so much, Satyam. And I wanted to come back to networking now and to Moutushi. Like, you've been at such amazing organizations at leadership levels. What are some of the networking strategies that have worked for you in building meaningful leadership connections?
Absolutely. Thank you for raising that. I think each of the organizations that I have been attached with, um, we've had really strong networks of, how would I say, members in solidarity. So once you actually move away from, focusing on the differences, you actually figure out that there is much more sort of connecting us than, keeping us different. And once you do that, then it becomes like, all of us are in the same journey, trying to help each other out. So this whole sense of trying to support each other through this journey is a very strong, motivator, and it's a very strong asset for any individual, especially as you move through the leadership process yourself. I mean, I have connections, friends who go back to the point when I started my career with the development sector in DFID. In fact, last week I was in the High Commission trying to catch up with colleagues who I had worked with in FD, who are now part of the FCDO. So which is the DFID doesn't exist anymore. So people like that can actually be your guiding factors as you move forward, but also bring in different perspectives because you as an individual continue to grow. Your network sort of acts as your point of growing, as well as to remind you that, some things have remained constant and you can fall back on. So whether it is DFID, whether it's Oxfam, for instance, also has a huge network of individuals who have been associated with that family for in various roles. And it's been many of them continue to reach out from the international space and the national space, trying to figure out what's happening. Similarly, with Makatha Foundation and Co-Impact, and more recently with AVP and as such. All I'm trying to say, Pallavi, is that, it is really something to inculcate and be intentional about, to stay with the peer group that you have grown with and you have actually worked with as such. Staying isolated, trying to do your own thing really doesn't take you very far, because you may be able to complete a task, but you really don't fulfill what is fully required of that particular role. Plus, you don't gain out of the collective support that you otherwise have access to. So it is really important to inculcate it. And sometimes it's really difficult for women to get that as such, because I feel that especially with women, given their own responsibilities, for many of us, the responsibilities sort of drive us to situations where you want a 9 to 6 job or a 9 to 7 job. So there's very little time inbuilt for informal chats or conversations. But those are very important in workplace, I feel, as well, to actually, create that network of affinity groups around you that can help you move forward as such. Many times, you will find people from that network itself, um, who can act as your own, guides through the process, who you can look forward to for advice, guidance as you move forward. I mean, there are times when I have now reached back to Satyam for advice as well. So in a way, it is not a one-way flow as such. There are times when, you also benefit from, you know, in getting answers to questions that you are currently grappling with. Yeah.
Thank you, Moutushi. I think like so much food for thought, and I will go back, reflect on all the things that you've said, and definitely like try and apply it also in my sort of personal
Can
branding.
I
Like, yeah,
Can I
yeah,
just add one more thing? I think in addition to sponsorships and mentorships, I think one of the things I would definitely ask women leaders to look out for is also some level of personal coaching, because a lot of the battles that we fight are internal.
mm,
Are really trying to figure out, what is it that would actually be aligned to the values that we each carry as such. And even before you access mentorship or request for sponsorships, or the other way around, it is very important to get those knots unpacked, and
mm.
to actually figure out what you want to do. So I would like to add to the list that you have, to request for some coaching to be included in this as well.
Yes, definitely very important point. And like we often overlook it, or we often like sort of postpone it, but very important to have coaches also which can guide us. So we just have 12 minutes left, and I wanted to open this up for Q&A. And there were a few questions that we received that deeply resonated with me, and I've been waiting for to ask those questions. So one of the things that, and I quote from the comments and questions that we received was, balancing the need to assert authority while navigating preconceived expectations of how women should lead has often been a challenge, right? And another person said that as a senior women leader, I'm often faced with challenges of coming across as hostile if I'm trying to be assertive. And it seems to be implicit that as a women leader, you have to be agreeable, which should not and cannot always be the case. And something that I was also struggling with, and Satyam knows this. How do you navigate this, as a women leader, if there are preconceived notions and you're supposed to behave in a certain way, and if you try to be assertive, you're seen as being hostile or being difficult to work with? How do you figure out like how to navigate this?
Mhm. You want me to answer that, Pallavi?
Yes, please.
Well, mine has been a journey. It started where you are currently finding yourself, where I wanted to be in a position where my responses were quite guided by what people around me expected to be. But where I have emerged out of that over several years and several levels of interactions is to be just truthful. And there will be people who will accept you for who you are, and there are people who will not accept you, and that's quite okay, actually. You don't have to be accepted by each and every one around you. But yes, I mean, this doesn't mean that I go into a completely different mode of who I am as such. But if there is something that I deeply believe in, it's really important to share that. And if I feel that I'm being undervalued day in and out, that's not a good place to be in, actually. So either I move to a situation where I'm able to influence my surrounding, including the people that I work with, and not really take patronizing remarks, or, deal with some level of patriarchy, even in the workspace, where I'm expected to do certain things and not others. And believe me, I've been in situations where one was expected to, sort of do only certain things because women were expected to, several roles like that. But the other good thing is that, what you are inside will come out in any way. No matter how you want to push yourself to be a person who wants to respond to everything as the world around you expects you to be, who you are inside will stay. So it's only going to make things easier to come out and speak about it, not necessarily have fights about it, but to be firm about it. To say these are very core values, these are important things that I stand for, and to stay truthful to that.
Great, great. No, thank you. And like, I'll reflect on it further, and I think what is inside will come out. Sometimes I struggle with it, like I'm being angry inside, and it sort of come out, and like you have to navigate that. And this goes back to one question that's also in the chat, and something that we heard earlier was, is there any guidance on balancing activism with business growth, and where you can ensure sustainability and long-term impact? And that's something like I see, like in my journey, I've been very angry with certain things that have happened. The more you learn about feminism, gender equity, there is a Gloria Steinem quote that, it'll piss you off, the truth will piss you off, but it'll set you free. So how do you sort of balance that and not let, some of the negative feelings sort of overpower, and continue to channel your sort of energies in something that's productive, something that's sustainable, that focuses on long-term impact? Because there were so many questions that were on, we have to deal with patriarchy, we have to deal with hierarchy, we have male dominated environments, and it's always like, women have to do much more than like what is required of them. So maybe Satyam and Rahul, you can come in on in your like roles, and like how have you balanced your political views, your activism with sort of business growth?
I think I would again go back, Pallavi, to figuring out what is important to you. Um, Taking an activist position, taking whatever position you say, I mean, I think there's a price attached to it. So, and it depends. That's why I go back to the individual to see where is it that you want to um, see yourself, to live with your dreams, to live with your objectives, to look for a perfect world. Just be aware, and I'm not saying this in any form of judgment, that to actually prioritize that over everything else will involve a price, will involve a level of commitment, which is very unique. And each of us have our own levels of, where we find our own level of peace. I mean, being in the sector itself, I feel that we are fighters. That is absolutely at the bottom. We are trying to look for changes. We're trying to look for outcomes which are difficult to achieve otherwise, just being in the sector. But here also there is a hierarchy as to where you really push yourself to become a Sachin Tendulkar, or you become somebody who is a superstar. That journey will have its own calls at different points in time, whether it's your personal life, whether it's the friends that you, or the parties that you will prioritize to not attend, or to attend, or different things. So again, I would go back to your individual needs and to say that, where is it that you find comfort? There's no right or wrong about it. To say that, if I say that, oh, you have to prioritize the cause over everything else, yes, but you need to be comfortable with it. A lot of our angst happens that we want a perfect world to be achieved, and also feel very unhappy when we face the pains associated with the journey as such. There will be pains, and it's important to feel that pain when you are trying to achieve something. You need to figure out your own, place of where you find peace and comfort. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you, Moutushi. And like perhaps last question that we can take, and building on this topic, and also building on the question in the chat is, you know, is our sector becoming a political, like, how important is it to sort of voice your political opinions if you want to? And like also like giving a personal example, when I was studying public policy, like some of the things, some of the insights would really affect me, and I would talk about government decisions and share like this is not right, this is not okay, and some of my family members would say please don't share that on social media, right? Like think about us. And so I stopped sharing. So like where, how do you sort of balance this, and do you think like voicing your views has now become something that's not okay and we all have to be apolitical?
So it's a very delicate topic, and I think I hear you, Pallavi, because this would have happened to me as well. But I think at the crux of it, sometimes it's about what battles do you want to win? Is it about winning that argument with a family member or a position, or and anyways, because since 2014 I decided to come in the development sector. I never thought of coming to the development sector, all the challenges or all the SDGs will be achieved by a certain date. I think when I decided to come into the sector, I I told myself there would be some things that I will work upon which may not be even achieved in my lifetime, but I will do some things which will help us get there eventually. But I may not see the best version of our world before I die. so so I think it is about like being very okay with opinions and points of view. Obviously you try to do what you can to convince them, but then that is not the war I came fighting for. So I think being very balanced about it is also important. Yeah. And if it is important to you, then you need to take a call, something like what Motishi said, right? If you want a workplace where you can be very open about it, but you realize this workplace isn't, then you need to choose a different workplace. No one is asking you to change. So yeah, sorry. Satyam, you want?
Satyam, any inputs on that?
I think we need another webinar just for this topic. But uh, I, I, I mean, we definitely live in a much more complex world. It's highly polarized, highly reactive, highly digital scrutiny is a new era we live in, and I guess the more you believe in that activism, you need to also be in a trade-off for what cost it comes with. I think people are slightly idealistic activists and don't understand the practical implication of that. And this is true not just for India. I think it's now any country in the world. And there are much more larger forces. And as I am getting older, I'm realizing that most of these wars are fought over in a very planned manner. Someone actually designed things that things happen, and you think that they are fighting for their rights and national boundaries, but someone designing it very far away thinks through all of this, and probably they also know the potential outcome. Similarly, I think in the world of work we live in, even in social sector, to an extent, people have like my biggest 2024 learning has been that there are institutions which can visualize how this is going to play out and span out. and before even something starts. And while when we get into it, we get excited, we build things around it, and we spend, let's say, X number of years. But there is someone who knows very well that this strategy is short lived and will not even last for 5 years. So it's a question then is, and you start processing and understanding these things in the world, you need to take a call which side you want to be, which battles you want to fight, and not every battle is worth fighting.
Yeah.
All of us did that when we were young, and now the question is it really worth it? And I question that a lot these days, given the climate we live in. I stay in Delhi. I don't want to talk about more of this, but we saw what happened with that kind of fight and where that fight has led to now in the last 10 years. So I don't know. In The answer is uh, stay true to your values, do things that excite you. Obviously, you need to get paid for it. Now, if you don't have to get paid for it and the financials are taken care of, then it's a very different story. But in the world of work, I no matter who says what, we don't live in an era where there is activism that is respected. Um,
Yeah.
if you go and write down something, very high likelihood an organization will officially ask you to take it down or remove it. Or if they don't, they will take action against you whether they tell you or not.
Yeah.
So, and that I also think just voicing opinions on social media does not mean you are an ardent believer in something. A lot of it also goes in people just want to say things because they can say it. Because if you believe in it, you should be out of your laptop working on it and not sitting on your laptop and staring in a screen and looking at the comments and likes and engagement, which is all designed in a very rigged way. So I'll stop here. That's it.
Thank you to our incredible panelists, Moutushi, Satyam, Rahul, for your insights and for this amazing conversation. We hope this session has given the ones who are attending valuable strategies to elevate your leadership journey. Thank you all for your participation today. I hope you feel inspired, equipped to lead boldly in the shifting landscape. Big shout out to our equally team members, Sneha, Sally, and Ritu, who have helped us put together this panel and this webinar. Stay connected, take action, and continue shaping the future of women's leadership. See you at the next session. Thank you.